Hey guys, in this part we talk about input types in HTML. Text input type. Input with text type defines a single line text input field. So for examples, I create two labels and two inputs with text type. So see the result, Ctrl R, and we have two single line text input field. Password input type. Input with password type defines the password field. So I create a label with password and type is password, ID is pass, and name is pass. And see the result, Ctrl R, we have password, type, and see the result. And the password is hidden. Reset input type. Input with reset type defines a reset button that will reset all form values to their default values. So I put the BR and create an input with reset type and Ctrl R, click, and the default value is empty. Right, and right, reset, and the values change. Radio input type. Input with radio type defines a radio button. Radio buttons let a user select only one of a limited number of choices. So I put the p tag, choice, and for example create input with type radio and name is for example radio and ID radio 1 and value is radio 1 and create a label for radio 1 and radio 1. Copy, paste and paste. Radio 2 and 3, 2 and yeah. And see the result, choice radio 1 or radio 2 or radio 3. Change the label and Ctrl R. Checkbox input type. Input with checkbox type defines the checkbox. Checkbox says let a user select 0 or more options of a limited number of choices. So copy and for example check and types is checkbox and names is for example checkbox and IDs has checkbox and values has checkbox and change labels sorry radio Oh, yeah, and the last checkbox. So Control R, check 1, or checkbox 2, checkbox 1, checkbox 2, or checkbox 3. Button input type. Input with button type defines the button. So I copy the tag, paste, create a BR tag, and the input with button type on click, alert hello world, and value is click me. Control R, click me, hello world. Color input type. The input with color type is used for input fields that should contain a color. Depending on browser support, a color picker can show up in the input field. So create a BR tag and create label, select a color, and input with color type, and see the result. Control R, select the color, click, and the color picker is showed. Data input type. The input with date type is used for input fields that should contain a date. Depending on browser support, a date picker can show up in the input field. So copy and paste, select a date, and type is date, and Control R for beauty, put the BR tag, and Control R, select the date, and click, and a date picker is show up. Select the date, for example, and yeah, or select the color. Okay, sorry. Okay, and yeah. Input type, datetime local input type. The datetime dash local type specify a date and date and time input field with no time zone. Depending on browser support, the date picker can show up in the input field. So copy and paste, BR tag, select the date to, and for example select birthday, and datetime dash local. Control R, select the birthday and datetime, and with datetime with time. Email input type. The email input type is used for input fields that should contain an email address. Depending on browser support, the email address can be automatically validated when submitted. Some smartphones recognize the email type and add .com to the keyword to match email input. So copy, paste, email, and type is email, and create a submit, type is submit, and Control R, create wrong email and submit. Please enter an email address. File input type. The input with file type defines a file select field and a browser button for file uploads. So I create a copy and paste, select a file and type is file. Ctrl R for beauty, create BR and BR and BR. Ctrl R, sorry, yeah, select the file, click, and you can select a file. Hidden input type. The hidden input type defines a hidden input field, and a hidden field lets web developers include data that cannot be seen or modified by users when a form is submitted. A hidden field often stores what database record that needs to be updated when the form is submitted. Note, while the value is not displayed to the user in the page content, it's visible and can be edited using any browser developer tools or view source functionality. Don't use hidden input as a form of security. So create a input with hidden type and set the value is hidden type. Ctrl R and we can't see the hidden input type. Month input type. The month input type allows the user to select a month and year. Depending on browser support, the date picker can show up in the input field. So copy and BR tags for break and select the month and year. Month, Ctrl R, select a month and input month and year. You can select month and year. Number input type. The number input type defines a numeric input field, and you can also set restrictions on what numbers are accepted. Sorry. The following example displays a numeric input field where you can enter a value from 1 to 5. So select the number and type is number and min is 1 and max is 5. Ctrl R, select a number, for example 10, and we can't select 10. Change, yeah. We can't up the number from 5 and down to 1. Range input type. The range input type defines a control for entering a number whose exact value is not important. Default range is 0 to 100. However, you can set restrictions on what numbers are accepted with the min, max, and step attributes. So, for example, volume between 0 to 15, and the type is range, min is 0, max 15, and controller volume from 0 to 50, and you can change the value. Search input type. The search input type is used for search fields, and a search field behaves like a regular text in text field. So search and type is search, and controller search, and you can type in the search input. Tell input type. The tell input type is used for input fields that should contain a telephone number. So copy, paste, and enter phone number, and the type is tell, and pattern is 0 to 5 3 times, and 0 to 9, and yeah, and set the placeholder. For example, see the result, enter your phone number and type in. Time input type. The time input type allows the user to select a time and no time zone. Depending on browser support, a time picker can show up in the input field. So select time and type is time, remove pattern and placeholder, controller, select time, click, and my browser don't support a time picker show up. URL input type. The URL input type is used for input fields that should contain a URL address. Depending on your browser support, the URL field can be automatically validated when submitted. Some smartphones recognize the URL type and add .com to the keyword to match URL input. Copy and paste, select or enter URL, the type is URL, and see the result. And click on submit query, and no. Week input type. The week input type allows the user to select a week and year. So copy and paste, select week and type is week. Control R, select the week, and my browser can't support show up date picker.